Hey, welcome to the channel. I'm Sean, and this is ToneFlow Studio. Today, I'm going to show you the evolution of a project that starts off as the simplest beat in Logic, but then we're going to bounce it out, upload it to Suno, and have it generate a song idea that we can then take back into Logic and work on even further. We're going to add instrumentation, work on a scratch vocal line that we can then generate some vocals with Suno and just have a lot of fun and watch it evolve into not one, but two different songs. I'm going to show you some of my thought process along the way on these tracks. So sit back and relax and let's do it. All right, guys. Today I want to walk you through really several projects that I've started and show you the round trip life cycle of working with the simplest idea in Logic and taking it into Suno. First, let me take you back to a project. This was a video I did a little bit ago, just showing how easy it is to set up a drum beat using the step sequencer and the drum machine designer. Sounds like that. And then I also showed how to use the step sequencer with a bass, with a software instrument, and just putting the simplest pattern in. Oh yeah. Right? So simple. So went ahead, bounced that out and uploaded it to Suno. So I generated, really, I was going for at the time, instrumental boom bap West Coast style hip hop groove, 92 BPM, and it came out with this. So I really loved that keyboard riff. That was something to work with. Downloaded that with the stems from Suno and started a new track. So the original track, I loved the keyboard. I wanted to fill out the sound a little bit. I wanted to play around with elements. So having the stems really helped with that. I wanted to come up with a more full arrangement with the vocals. So let's see, I'm going to show you something. This is rather embarrassing, but I want to show you, you don't have to be a singer at all. If you have the melody idea, you can generate some really cool things. And this, I'm just showing you this to prove the point. I love playing guitar. I'm somewhat of a multi-instrumentalist, a little bit of piano, guitar, bass, things of that nature, but singer I am not. But you can, in Logic, you can put a pitch correction and you can just do, the basic idea. So here's a little bit of a snippet of that. Okay, so no lyrics yet, just scatting it out, all right? And I wanted a sultry female vocalist, so I'm writing. So at this point, I've switched into, I am in songwriter mode, and I'm working with an artist, and I'm going for, I love that kind of Sade, neo-soul, smooth female vocalist on this type of music. And so it generated some tracks. Let's give those a quick listen. All right, lots of ooh la la la's and just scatty kind of stuff going on in there, but definitely enough to work with. So brought it back into Logic, spliced up what it gave me, into an arrangement so I could basically have a basic arrangement. And then it took a little bit of time once I had that in place to come up with some basic lyrical idea. I kind of used some of the syllable that was generated from Suno to help guide me towards maybe some words and some sounds. Again, if I was really working on a real project that for release with another artist, we would try to dig in and find something a little bit more from the heart and soul, but I really just wanted to get something up and going. So let's preview. I think I have some of it going on this particular session here in Logic, and I'm going to just walk you through some of what I did to fill out the sound and change things up. So let's just give this a listen.
no other, and this night And these nights of fire turning me up. I'll be another woman tonight. I'll be another woman tonight. I'll be another.
All right. So I'm going to stop it right there. So cool. Got a vocal and some personality to the song. One of the things I did, I liked the drums that it generated. I wanted to add a little bit of variation and a little bit different type of character on the snare. So, you can come in here to your drum track. And what I ended up doing was just chopping up and grabbing the snare from this waveform and then putting it on an empty instance of the drum machine, a designer, dragged it onto this, and then just used a MIDI. You could use a step sequencer and MIDI or either or to put the snare hits in. And I've got some extra reverb on top of that. So this drum here, let's just listen to that soloed. Okay, and you can hear it's got a little bit of artifacting going on there, and the mix, it doesn't sound bad. And I mean, again, this is just, it's just for having fun at this point. So I'm not getting super critical on some of those things, but that's part of the process from Suno is when you're splitting out these stems, it's trying to do that using AI, and sometimes there's little glitches and things happening. So when you generate the stems, it does give you two different versions that you can audit, and you can try to find one that has a little bit more clarity. But for now, that's just what's going on with that. So anyway, the snare soloed here. I've added some reverb, an instance of Valhalla, which I love the Valhalla vintage verb, just to give it that little bit of extra bass, and it kind of adds a little bit of that vintage vibe going there. So the other thing is that I chopped up the snare and added little ghost notes here and there, just enough to give it this sort of variety happening in the background. See if you can hear that. Let me just... So you hear that little ta-ta-ta-ta. Those are not in the original track, but throughout I added those here and there just to give it a little bit more of a human sort of flavor and character, as if what a human drummer would do, adding in little fills. I did take a little bit of time with it, maybe half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, just to go through and do that. So not a super amount of crazy time, but enough to just give it that character. All right. I've also added in things. I've added a tambourine MIDI that I grabbed a tambourine sample. There's areas where I've added in the hip Rhodes on the electric piano. That's just the Logic preset, and that adds that really vibey, let's just hear that. Okay, so that's that Rhodes piano sound that is very like trip hop kind of esque, like Portishead, uses that instrument. Anyway, that's, in that genre, that this kind of lo-fi jazzy genre that really goes a long way. So got that kind of coming in here and there. I've added a string section. Logic has their studio strings, and you can find a patch there. They have the hit Y here to come up with your library, but they have these section strings that you can choose, and I just found one. And this isn't heavily edited. There's more you can do to make your strings sound more authentic, but at the moment they're just lying in here in the background. But those come in on the chorus sections to kind of give it that lift, because you do want your verses, your choruses do need to have that extra energy in your arrangement. So bringing in additional percussive elements, tambourines or shakers, and then bringing in some of those keyboard type elements to fill out the sound. Not enough to overwhelm it. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is that the track Suno had the electric guitar that it added in the background, and instead of using the track as is, I added a little delay on there. Okay, yeah, so the original track, let's go back to Suno and see if we can hear that. Hear that rhythm guitar? So this just gives it a little trippier and simplifies the sound a little bit. They had a great little brass kind of hits happening in the background. Okay, so those were actually layered in with some of the synth. So I just kind of separated those out and added the reverb. And, so all of this is just helping to fill out that track and give it a really kind of trippy vibe. And so let's just listen to that a little bit more, and I'll note the chorus. And also I kind of start building things with this guitar. There's a little bit of a guitar riff that I took. There's a guitar solo, which you'll hear a little bit of. So I took the very front of the guitar solo and I just chopped that up. Let's just hear that playing without any processing. Okay, so just a little riff there. But that is going through Guitar Rig and some one of the presets there, which has a reverse delay and some really cool reverb and delay. And that sounds like this. All right, so that brings in another element here to help lift the track as it right before the guitar solo. And let's just listen from a little bit of a chorus into the guitar solo section. Oh, I should also note that on the keyboard, I like the simplified keyboard line. Instead of repeating that original keyboard riff at the beginning. Okay, instead of repeating that throughout, I just make sure we're using a simplified keyboard line for the most of the section with the vocals, just to not compete with that. So let's just listen from the chorus on for just a little bit. So we get a sense of that, guys. And just a couple of things. So yeah, I bring in that little Latin triangle. That's just a sample here in the loop library, just to give it a little bit of lift as it goes along through that. If I came back just listening through as the guitar solo comes in, I would want to do some type of transition in the music. It kind of just starts. So I would do some type of transition. There was a section over here where in the Suno track, I think there was a slight break, but it wasn't, there wasn't anything rhythmic. I think something just maybe cut out, or maybe it was one of the versions had a cutout. The Suno comes up with two different versions here. So one of them, it cuts out the music and this vocal just happens. But in that version, the instrumentation just played through, but I liked having a cut there, and I wanted to do kind of a hip hop style stutter here with the drum. So I just ended up cutting the kick drum and the bass kind of just boom, 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 bumps along with it. The brass, the brass instrument happens. So it sounds like that. Let's hear that. Okay, so those are just the little details that you can do to give flavor, give it some individuality, and just take the stuff that Suno's doing and make it your own. And again, these are things that are happening in sessions that would maybe be 30, 40 minutes, an hour. Come back working on it again for a little bit. And after a couple of days of just a few sessions like that, you've got a really cool track that's more than just a simple repetitive backing track. It's got a little bit more life. And one of the reasons that I love doing this, and I think a lot of you too, is that you want to be creative. It's in you to be creative. It's an important thing to keep this part of yourself alive. And so doing this type of creative exercise where you're taking the extra steps, to have fun with it and to dive in and do fun stuff with it, I think is important. And so that is where I was with this track. Now, one of the things that'll happen when you're working on these tracks is you're going back and forth, you're going to different sections, you're looping things, you're trying to, line up maybe to splice something at the right point. You're, exploring the music and your arrangement, and you will loop something and that'll sound cool just looped. So during the process of working with this, I was looping this section. And I dropped the lead vocal out. And I realized that just looping that first measure sounded really cool to me. So I decided to just solo some of the instruments from that, to grab the stems just from that one little region cycle. So you can bounce those out if you just, if you solo any type of instrument here and you bounce these out, it'll just bounce out that soloed part just for that section that you're doing. So then I'll have waveforms that I can pull back into another project. Now you could also copy and paste these in, but what will happen then is that you won't have all of the effects that you have on chain here. So if you bounce them out, it's going to bounce out everything that's going on with your mixing chain and your track here. So then you have that already, all of those effects on there, whereas you have to recreate those in your new session if you're dragging them in or pasting them in some other way. So I did that. I'm going to show you the new track that I started with that, but also wanted to keep in mind one thing I meant to mention at the beginning of this. I started with a Suno track, Suno stems, to build this based off an original idea, right? That was a simple groove at a certain BPM. Now, Suno uses what's called variable BPM. It's oftentimes you'll find that the tracks can slow down and speed up throughout the track. So you'll have to make a decision what you want to do if you're working with Suno stems that do have your variable BPM. Do you want to try to force those to a set BPM for your track, or do you want to follow along with the tempo of the Suno tracks? For some of this type of music, I like that feel. I like when those quiet parts at the beginning, it's a little slow, but then it speeds up. So I made sure that when I'm importing those stems for the first time that I choose the smart tempo track Logic will then align those stems together, linked together, their tempos, and then it will have a tempo track that will fluctuate. And you'll see that up here. You can access that a few different ways, but you can access it in this arrangement panel up at the top. And then it creates, similar to your automation, these are all different BPMs. If you click on it, you see here, those can be slid up and down, and it will change it. But of course, I don't want to do that now because I have everything locked in at that BPM. Now you can also, if you ever need to edit that, just as another tip, you can come up to this panel here, and it does have all of your BPMs where you can come in and double click and change these. Not something I'm going to do now. I just wanted to note that. So with that, let's bump over to my other project. And guys, if you're still with me, part of the thing I'm doing with these videos is figuring out different formats that people are interested in. And this is a bit of a walkthrough. I'm not walking through the actual tedious process of the editing, but maybe that is something that people will be interested in seeing. And if so, I can do a video where I dive in and do that. So here is the sample with the drums removed of all of the instruments playing together that I liked from that loop. Okay, so what I did was I went in. Okay, yeah, so I went in the different samples. Like I said, I did the stems. Now, some of these I'm going to go ahead and delete. This is, I've got it marked for deletion. I ended up not using that, all right? And some of these, like the guitar, it's cool and vibey, but I ended up not liking it in the track. So those I can delete. The synth, I did like the synth. Okay, and it's important to note that I also slowed the tempo down to 80, which is considerable from the track before was a variable. It was between 88 and I think the fastest it got towards the faster sections of the song was maybe 93, 94. So there is quite a variation there, but at 80 is pretty considerably slower. Now I'm also shifting this down. I'm using the Logic pitch shifter. It's down 2 semitones, which is a whole step. So it's like in the key of D minor. That's one way to pitch shift. Now you can also come up here into the region and double click on the transpose and do it here, but that's sometimes is a little wonky. I just find that just dropping it on the track like this, it works fine because then I know that it's going to just affect everything on the track. I don't have to worry about whether a region is selected or not and whether this processing is going to apply. So I just did it there. But I did like the brass. Okay, there's that guitar that I like, so that's coming in, but I've just made sure to drop it in a few different places. Now, what I did was I took that original sample and I dropped a drum beat on top of it. Okay, very electro kind of beat. I also took the drum kit and I spliced out the drum, the kick, the snare, and a hi-hat so that I could then come up with another drum beat that was a little bit more active and had a little bit more real live drum sound. Okay, and then I came up with a smooth bass line that I liked for it. All right, using the Agile synth bass from Alchemy, which I do love that. So I got a nice smooth kind of synth bass sound. And then just experimenting. Now I'm not using this now, but it gives me an idea for maybe going in later and changing things up. Having like a trap style hi-hat would make this song sound a little bit more modern. All right, but that's actually not being used right now. So let's hear what it came up with in Suno. Now, I also come up with a scratch vocal because my idea for this was to do like a massive attack style groove. So let's just listen to this real quick. So I also went ahead and played around with the piano. Let's see. All right, so that was my new melody for this new track. Okay, so just based off of that instrumentation there, and of course I always love having that little crackle sound, that was what gave me the inspiration for this Suno track that I uploaded. So again, embarrassing, but here is a little bit of a really awful vocal so you can hear what it starts with and what I then will generate from this idea. Okay, so let's listen to what it came up with from that. All right, so that's really groovy, right? And again, we now have lyrics now. So that's something that still needs to be done here. Now, I did like the drums that it produced. I liked the bass. The bass was a little bit more of a live bass type of sound, and I did like it. So I ended up using that. I ended up using the original drum pattern. This is the Dark Arts preset from Logic, and I just used that little kick snare pattern at the intro. But then I do bring in the other instruments with the drums and the bass from the new cover. But I'm also using my original keyboard line. Of course, I'm doing the same thing on the chorus here. I'm using just a synth patch as a sort of a string type of sound. It's not the strings, it's a synth. And the other thing I wanted to note, so I love, of course, a lot of my videos, you'll see I'm always adding some type of vinyl crackle. Adding that vinyl crackle. Now my 7-year-old was listening to the track and he was playing with a little plastic bag that was in here, little wrapper. He said, "Dad, you should put this in your music and your song." And you know what? I heard it and it sounded like the type of thing that I love having going for texture in the background. With a little bit of reverb and compressor on there. And so together those make the perfect little, dusty kind of crackle background sound. All right, so that's the kind of stuff. Again, when you're being creative, like be open to creative ideas that are coming from anywhere to give life to your music. I just was tickled so much. My son is so creative and gives me so much inspiration that way. So I thought that was awesome. So definitely look for those kind of things, those happy little accidents and inspirations in your day-to-day, creative exercises. So, but let's just listen to some of this track of what we have going so far. Again, this next step here would be to go in and do a vocals. And I would just do a scratch vocal with the lyrics, trying to match the vocal of of what was generated. Now, the great thing about Suno is that you can also take any song and it will come up with the lyrics that it generates here. For example, if it's just singing ooh, 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 but you can just rewrite the lyrics here for each verse and chorus. And as long as it's matching, the section or the part of the song, it'll replace it with your own lyrics. So it's just, I feel like the back and forth of, discovering these workflows to use Suno as a creative songwriting partner. And I think it's just fantastic. I mean, I'm not going to be someone to shirk away from AI and what we can use AI and how we can use AI. It's just, again, I always just think we need to make sure that we keep the humanity and the soul front and center and the starting point, and then let AI, be our slaves, essentially. Let it do the work for us. But anyway, let's just listen to some of this. All right, so you can see it's really groovy. It's just, I think it's a really cool direction for the song. It adds that chorus, the bass chord progression there, which I think is just fantastic. And a couple of things to note. Once again, I'm adding a little pass with the hip roads that just kind of comes in at the start of that chorus section. The other thing I'm doing is I'm using the Logic Studio Grand, and I've got an instance of that guitar rig preset with the delay, the reverse delay that I was using on the guitar on the other track. And it just creates just that really trippy, very, I think, beautiful, affected type of sound in the background. Listen to that. All right, so that, I think, sounds cool in that track underneath. Okay, and then here's that synth that comes in. Also, this would be a next step for me. I'm trying to work out a guitar part. I really love in that song, Ordinary Love by Sade, there's this great riffing guitar that comes in the second verse, I think, of the song, or the second pre-chorus. And it's just, I wanted to capture some of that vibe. So I've got this crunchy guitar that first comes in, just this sort of sporadic rhythm part. And then it comes in more of a riffing part here. Okay, so those are really like, you know, metal crunch kind of thing happening. But in the track, in the background, I think it just, it adds a layer of texture that I think is nice. It helps lift it right there. Let's mute out the vocal and listen. Okay, and then I did have a little a lead guitar line that I would probably go back in and rework. That sounds like this. Okay, and that just has reverb and delay sends on there, just the stock, tape delay, quarter note delay. So, this is just a work in progress on the arrangement. It's just about, what I might want to come up with for this. And of course, I would want to take the time to go in and hit A, and you can expand your automation, and you can play around with automation for the volume for different sections to come in and out. That's the kind of polish that you'd put, towards the end if you wanted to take this and develop it into more of a complete finished polished track. And again, those lyrics, I would want to work those probably just to have something, even if they're just scratch lyrics, but have something that was lyrical. So, okay, so that's about it for now, guys. But for now, I just wanted to walk through and show the creative process that happens while you're working through some of these projects, to encourage you to just go in and do it yourself. All right. One thing that is also cool is if you do not have a digital keyboard, you can hit Command K, and you can actually use your computer keyboard to type in the notes for some of these sounds. So you can, or of course you can also use, like I showed in another video, the step sequencer to add some of these, musical notes in. So for bass lines, keyboard, electric piano strings, things like that, you can at least add in some of your own parts without having to just manually enter it. So just another thing to mention as a little tip. But again, go in, guys, have fun with this stuff. Go in, play around. The sky's the limit, but the important thing is that you're playing, that you've got your guitar in your hand, and you're playing with some of these tools and just being creative and expressing yourself. It's really worthwhile, the peace of mind that you get from it as a creative person. So, all right, guys, until next time, thank you for hanging with me, and please leave a note in the comments. I'd love to hear from you, and until next time, I'll talk with you later. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for hanging with me. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me with the algorithm. Until next time, keep jamming.